Level now.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to everyone for joining us from Vietnam, from Canada, and from around the world. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this Build Your Future in Vietnam webinar. Quick introduction, I'm Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. You might have noticed I'm not Canadian, for which I can only apologise. I'm just masquerading for the purposes of this job. I'd like to thank, first of all, the International School Ho Chi Minh City, or ISHCMC, for supporting this initiative this morning. Quick introduction about the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, or Cancham. We are one of the leading international business associations in Vietnam. We have around 150 members in different sectors and industries, from education to healthcare, manufacturing, legal services, aviation, and on it goes. And we support Canadian businesses, professionals, and families living and working in Vietnam. About today's webinar. So this is designed for investors, business people, families, individuals who are considering a move to Vietnam, whether relocating for work, for business, for investment, or for personal reasons. Today's speakers will share their practical insights from their specific sectors and industries to help make this a smooth transition. But first of all, why do so many people want to move to Vietnam? I mean, I've been here a decade, so I can understand a lot of these reasons. But let me just sort of sketch out a few of them. Vietnam is one of Asia's fastest growing economies. I think the last 2024, 25 was around 7 to 8%. The government's targeting 8% GDP growth again this year. It's a market of more than 100 million people, with a booming middle-class consumer market and strong demand across a range of sectors and industries. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, is strong. I think $25 billion in FDI in 25. And what does that mean? Well, it reflects a growing and continued confidence from international investors and business leaders. And Vietnam is also a growing hub in a particular set of industries, from high-tech to manufacturing, professional services, education, innovation, also financial services, and also green tech and renewables. But it's not just about the business and economic opportunities. Life's about much more than that. Vietnam also has beautiful, stunning natural scenery, beaches and islands to mountains and vibrant cities. It's got a world-renowned food culture, and it's one of the most exciting foodie destinations in Asia. The people are warm and welcoming, and there's a rich cultural heritage. But also on top of all that, it's got modern healthcare facilities and an expanding network of international schools and businesses. And it's got a dynamic international community and quality of life that continues to attract professionals and families from around the world, as this webinar is testament to. At Cancham, we're seeing more and more Canadians and professionals considering relocating, investing, or starting businesses in Vietnam, or building their careers here. But relocating, or rather a successful relocation, is, it's not as simple as booking a flight and getting a visa. We need to understand the education environment, the healthcare infrastructure, housing, legal requirements, visas and work permits, and also the career opportunities to make this transition a successful one. So that's the reason we're here this morning. That's why we've brought together a panel of experts from these fields to share their practical insights and help you better understand what it takes not just to move to Vietnam, but to thrive here. So the topics in the webinar will be education, healthcare, housing and living, visas and work permits, and also career opportunities and the job market. A little bit of housekeeping first of all. The webinar is being recorded. Um, Please submit questions through the Zoom Q&A or the chat, and we'll pick those up at the end. So we're going to start with one of the most important considerations for families. I know this as a parent, I have a child here as well. So one of the most important considerations for families relocating to Vietnam, and that's education. So our first speaker will be Marco Longmore. He's head of school at Cognita Asia. Marco brings extensive experience in international education and school leadership across Asia. And this morning, he's going to share his insights on choosing the right school and supporting family transitions when moving to Vietnam. So I'm going to hand over to Marco now, and please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Lawrence, and good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar. It's a pleasure to partner with Cancham and the important work that it does here, serving international community of Canadian heritage, but actually across multiple heritages as well, just as we do at the International School of Ho Chi Minh City, which I will talk about in a moment. If I can master the technology, I will share my screen and talk to a set of slides which will hope to illustrate the points I'm making. If I can also, there we are. Hopefully everyone is seeing introductory slide, education of Vietnam, choosing the right school for your family. It is a key consideration for anyone looking at an international move. And I know what that's like. I am 35 years as head of school in various parts of the world. Moved overseas in the last decade to do a series of founding schools in Dubai and in China with local partners. And then I've worked in the last 4 years with an international organization. You'll see the name at the bottom of there, Cognita, a UK-based organization, but has around 90 schools globally. And ISHCMC, the International School Ho Chi Minh City, is one of the key ones of this family of schools. Why is it important to have that insight for you today, but more importantly, when you engage with any school thinking of moving your family? It's important that you have people who recognize the challenge of relocation, because there's absolutely no doubt that there is a challenge in that. And having lived through that with my own family at younger ages, then I know it's daunting. But just because it's daunting, it doesn't need to be overly complicated, and can be made much simpler and more pleasurable for everybody, depending on the interactions and the support that you receive along the way. So today is a start, but like any journey, there's lots of other parts to follow on. And I know Cancham and the International School Ho Chi Minh City would be very happy to guide you on that journey as you consider your move to Vietnam. Let me talk a little bit about the education landscape within the country. People often misunderstand the nature of educational provision in Vietnam. Lawrence did mention it is a growing and a burgeoning sector, and it is, but it also has long tradition. ISHCMC, as an example of that here in Ho Chi Minh City, is regarded as the legacy school of the city. It's been open for 34 years. It has led the way in terms of its representation of a truly internationalized education. I'll talk more specifically about my own school towards the end of the presentation. But in general understanding, there are, as most of you will understand, two major hubs, relocation centers, both in the north and the south of the city, the country. Cities of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. Increasing interest in Da Nang for many, but the educational sector there is less developed than you will find in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City. International schools represent multiple nationalities. You would expect to come into an environment where there will be no single dominant nationality. You will often find Vietnamese heritage families as a the largest minority demographic in most international schools. But beyond that, you have representation from around the world, with a heavy representation from other Asian countries such as Korea and Japan, but not exclusively, with many North American, both Canadian and US citizens being involved in the education sector and in the teaching family that represents the communities that international schools represent. So in this slide, you see that there are over 60 international schools that would fit the bill and be recognized. But within that, there is quite a broad variation in terms of how schools are set up. So let me just try and give you some context of that. In Vietnam, the educational landscape is broadly divided into three discrete sectors. You have national education, public schools. Those are Vietnamese curriculum and Vietnamese language based. All schools, whichever of the three listed there, public, private, bilingual, or international, they're all governed by an operating license. And that operating license has a national body called MOIT, but also more local, city-based district organizations do it here in Ho Chi Minh City. And they have certain requirements and standards that are met to provide education for all who attend those schools, but with a particular focus towards Vietnamese nationals. So language curriculum is particularly important, as is history and the socioeconomic teaching that is within that. Public schools for an international arrival are not particularly popular because of the requirement for very high-level competence in Vietnamese to be able to access the curriculum. An option which starts to become more meaningful for a number of relocating families are bilingual schools. And bilingual schools are a blended combination of Vietnamese curriculum, Vietnamese language teaching, but also English as the common language of an international community as well. And you will see a number of families consider these as part of their option. They are generally at a mid-range price point, and they represent, in many examples, a high-quality delivery of education, but with a particular nuance in terms of the balance of the demographic that they serve, which is predominantly Vietnamese or Vietnamese heritage. So certainly worth considering, but most relocating families will be looking at a full international school. And the differential there is that the international school, though licensed by MOIT and DOIT, to make sure that their provision for Vietnamese nationals and non-Vietnamese nationals in the teaching of Vietnamese history and culture are met and requirement, but actually the predominance of their curriculum and the time focused in teaching and learning is on one of the number of international curricula frameworks that we have available, and I'll move on to discuss those in a moment. So those are the broad outlines. International schools are probably where most of our relocating families would expect to land. As I said, Vietnam has a mature and maturing international education sector. And as a result of that, then you have four main categories of curricular frameworks in which the schools set up their main provisions. The International Baccalaureate Organization, or IB as it's often referred to, is the globally recognized international approach to the delivery of a broad-based, child-based, inquiry-based approach to learning. That is something which is central to my own school at the International School Ho Chi Minh City. A number of other schools do adopt this as well within the country. It is a popular choice for many international families because of its distribution across the world in terms of relocating families and maintaining some progress through the primary years program, the middle years program, and the diploma program, which takes you from K to 12. Another popular option is, as described there, as British, which is principally, I'll be honest with you, English. I'm a Scotsman, so I know the difference. The English education system, which is IGCSE and A levels. Obviously, high quality education structure, particularly useful for students who like to focus on depth in inquiry in particular disciplines, and is often very popular amongst families who are very specifically considering UK or Commonwealth-based university options. I think one of the misnomers, and is worth discussing with any school as you engage with it, is the idea that a curriculum offers a route to a particular nationality of universities. It's just not the case anymore. Premium universities around the world recognize all of these curricula and will work very hard to encourage your child to successfully apply and enter into them. So that's something which you should not be unduly concerned about in the long term. I think it's more important to recognize what are the qualities and experiences that you want within the education provision of a school rather than the set curriculum itself. But just briefly, you'll also find another a series of provisions which are broadly labeled as American, which really refers to the AERO standards. No set American curriculum per se, but certainly a benchmark of standards and an outline of progress, which a number of schools offer. And indeed, my own school, International School of Ho Chi Minh City, ISHCMC, we use those standards as an underpinning benchmark framework for the IB, and that's quite a common approach in IB schools around the world. And then you have a very specific program based out of Singapore, which is a blend of the British approach, but a real rigor in maths and science, which is offered by some. You do need to think about the approach of your own child and what you're hoping for as a school community, as much as any curriculum framework that's presented. Briefly, Hanoi, some excellent cities there, some long-standing names. Eunice is well known, BIS, St. Paul's, Hanoi International School. There are a list. Others will talk about the difference between North and South Vietnam. Linguistically, I understand there are some challenges. I'm still challenged by South Vietnamese. I'm about to travel to North Vietnam, and I will use my excuses of having learned South Vietnamese rather than Northern Vietnamese to get by my speaking English, which is always an embarrassment, not to be able to engage more fully with our host nation's language, but I'm trying. But lovely city. I have visited before. It's often regarded as having a broader range of seasonal climates compared to the south. But depending on who you speak to, there's discussion around how relevant that is. Where we are here in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam's largest city, 30+ international schools. As I said, ISHCMC, the legacy school of long-standing first continuum IB school within the city, but a number of other very popular choices available, and new entrants coming into the market as well. So there is a lot of premium choice to consider. Two main districts are often referred to. District 7, where you see the name Saigon South International School, is located. And what used to be called District 2, and most people still refer to it as District 2, Thao Dien and Phu, that is where ISHCMC and BIS is located. These are names that invariably will come up in your conversations when considering schools in the city. There's a much longer conversation to be had around how to approach choosing a school. But if this is your first venture into an international setting, and perhaps you're considering this for an early stage in education, it's much more important to get the right fit and feel. So curriculum, we've already mentioned. Year group availability is a challenge. In some cases, a number of schools, such as my own, will be running waiting lists for entry points into year groups. But we are an international setting, and so people do move. So even if there's not an immediate entry available, don't lose heart with that. There will be opportunities that come up. The infrastructure within Ho Chi Minh City, and I also understand within Hanoi as well, is rapidly developing. But whereas in some parts of the world you would be used to quite easy, long commuting, it's less favorable here in the city. The challenges of infrastructure and public transport availability means that consideration of where you locate to the commute to the school is often a key consideration. And then also community fit. How do you feel you will fit into a community? And I'll touch on that in a moment, because that's a key consideration for the success of the move as well. And another factor, of course, is when you're looking online, you'll see multiple different ways to calculate a fee. And so it's a key consideration to you as to what's in the fee structure and what's excluded. What may appear to be the most economically advantageous position to you, actually, by the time you add in all the extras which aren't included in the fee structure, ends up being a rather large bill. Some schools, historically my own, will wrap up pretty much everything in the fee. So it may be, and it is, one of the highest in the country, but you know what you are getting from day one. So some key questions, and perhaps these will come out in questions and answers later on. What is the language support? How is that going to look for my child? What is the broader activities? Because that's such an important part for the success of integration and relocation. How do we support individually schools? How do we support well-being in this? We want to make sure academically there's success, but actually the students themselves need to be happy and have fun on a daily basis. How do we get them there? University outcomes and destinations is a key consideration. And then, of course, we have school communication with parents. How is that set up? How can you access the school support? And also, I do believe that you should, when you're looking at an international school, do not assume that all are of a similar nature. Look at the demographic mix, look at the breadth. Some international schools are not that international in terms of their demographic structures, and that may not be a problem. I'm not saying it should be a problem, but if your purpose and your plan is to have a very internationalized community around you, then you do need to make some targeted questions around how that mix looks for that school. So key tips. Do start early. Don't leave it too late. There is provision. It is there to meet your needs. But there are a number of requirements to do with English language and also to do with your onboarding experience generally, which requires school to give schools enough time to process meaningfully your application to get that offer. Nearly all international schools will offer you a campus visit online. It's worth doing that to understand the nature of the school. And also consider mid-year entry. Very often there's a very fixed sense of, in Northern Hemisphere, a summer start. International schools here are used to welcoming families and students at different points in the year. And so it does make relocation a bit more flexible for you. I do believe that you should look at online resources, but I also believe you should avoid others. Please don't be drawn into forum chats, which can quite often be skewed by particular individuals or groups who have an axe to grind with the school. It's not representative. If you come across it, ask the school about it. And they will, in all honesty, I'm sure, give you a clear understanding of what the issue is, if there was an issue behind a group's angst. But do use the online resources as well. And then, as I said earlier, well-being is a key and vital part. I'll finish just briefly with my own school because I've referenced it a few times. I think it's important to understand what a school such as ISHCMC truly represents. And this reinforces, and I hope gives you confidence that in moving to Vietnam, you're coming into an environment which will support your child's education very successfully and in a mature and in a developed way, which those who have not had contact with the country often don't understand. ISHCMC, as I said, is the legacy school. We have some key stats there. I've put a star above 60 plus nationalities. That is a key mark of our internationalism. And we provide an education which allows our students to go on, and I'll mention where they go on to in a moment. But the IB curriculum is central to the way in which we approach our schooling. We have a continuity, and the continuity is less to do with content. It's much more to do with the approach to learning and the development of skills and aptitudes in the learner, which in a continuum school of pedigree such as our own allows students to really have confidence as they emerge through their adolescence into young adulthood and go on in the world. And that's why for us, our identity of being an international community of 60 plus is grounded in Vietnam. As an international school, we have a huge love and care and empathy towards our host nation's culture, language, and identity. But our students, irrespective of background, we are preparing to thrive across the world. And they do. And this is where they end up. They go to North America. You see Canada represented there, US, other parts of Europe, Australasia, and of course, other areas of Asia. And as an international school, we take it as a responsibility to ensure that we keep as many doors open as possible. And the early stats from this year's cohort of 116 students shows the way in which we've guided our students to access scholarships. They won't take them all up. Of course they won't, because they'll choose where they go. But it does mean at that value of 112 million US valued scholarship offers to our current cohort means that they have many doors open from a financial perspective, particularly in North America, which they would not otherwise have had. And some of those institutions apply in Canada as well. The breadth of schooling is something which many of you will recognize and want to continue here in Vietnam when you relocate with family. And that's a key part to provisions which a number of international schools can provide you with. And if ISHCMC sounds an attractive option to you, we'd love to hear from you. Those are our details. They can be shared through Cancham, and we will very much enjoy engaging. So thank you for the time this now. I'll be online. I'll take any questions specific, but I'm always available, and the team here at ISHCMC are available for more detailed questions later. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. I was just thinking while listening to that, I wish I'd had that presentation 5 years ago when I was first looking at schools. Would have saved me a lot of time. So thanks so much, Marco, for sharing. So education is so important, and so is our next topic, which is healthcare. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Nguyen Thi Hong from Phuc International Hospital. Dr. Van is the acting head of the outpatient department and officer in charge of the health checkup unit, which will be important for those who do end up coming to Vietnam. She'll talk about healthcare services and considerations for expats moving to Vietnam. Dr. Van, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Nguyen Thi Hong from Phuc Hospital, in Phuc International Hospital in Bình Dương district. Now I want to share with you just a little about the healthcare and work permit medical exam for expats. In Vietnam, now the Ministry of Health give the law for the work permit health checkup package is unique in all the hospital in Vietnam. About the work permit health checkup package, it composed of just the consultation and examination of 6 to 7 specialty, doing the diagnostic imaging to check the lung, the tuberculosis, the blood test for the complete blood count, the glucose for diabetes, the liver enzyme, the kidney function, the urine test, and in the end, the conclusion. It's very simple. This is the form of the medical examination certificate. It's unique for all parts of Vietnam. Normally, formally it's different from the north part and the south part, but now it's where the Ministry of Health give the unique form for the work permit examination. Yeah, you can see this form and it has the conclusion.
About Hạnh Phúc International Hospital, we are a member of Hoàng Mỹ Medical Corporation, one of Vietnam's leading private healthcare networks with 17 hospitals and clinics nationwide. For more than 15 years, we have been providing high-quality healthcare services with a patient-centered approach. Our hospital operates in accordance with internationally recognized healthcare standards, including ISHCMC and ATAC, reflecting our commitment to quality, safety, and clinical excellence. With experienced specialists and modern medical technology, we offer comprehensive healthcare services, including women's health, pediatrics, fertility, general medicine, surgery, and corporate health screening. To provide greater convenience to our patients and corporate partners, we also collaborate with more than 40 local and international insurance providers through direct billing arrangements. At Hạnh Phúc, we are committed to delivering safe, personalized, and high-quality care for every patient.
At Hạnh Phúc Hospital, we produce the health checkup packages from the simple to the complicated packages for screening on the matters of the health, including the stroke or even the cancer. About the vaccination, there's a questions that's for all the expats before coming to Vietnam. What vaccination the expats should prepare for themselves and their family? We recommended vaccination for expats in Vietnam. The routine vaccines ensure they are up to date. MMR for measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, influenza, and especially dengue fever. And we strongly recommended the hepatitis A, hepatitis B, and typhoid, especially if eating local food or traveling frequently. About the corporate health checkup, Hạnh Phúc Hospital is the trusted healthcare partner of over 100 industrial parks and large enterprises in Eastern Ho Chi Minh City. We produce several packages for the health checkup in the company, in the credit part and S part and inside the hospital. Hạnh Phúc International Hospital brings together a highly qualified team and physicians, nurses, and medical technicians with a wide range of professional credentials, including resident physicians, specialists, level 1 and 2, doctors, master degree holders, and PhD qualified experts. Trained at leading healthcare institutions, both in Vietnam and abroad, our medical professionals are committed to delivering compassionate
With extensive experience in successfully implementing hundreds of health checkup programs for large enterprises, industrial parks, and export processing zones, Hạnh Phúc International General Hospital takes pride in delivering a synchronized, closed-loop, and flexible implementation process from consultation and preparation to on-site examinations and fast, accurate, consolidated reporting. Hoàng Mỹ Group Network, we get the advanced clinical expertise support from Hoàng Mỹ Group Network and seamless result follow-up via Nguyen Thi app. Thank you. So that's all. Thank you. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks so much. So we'll take the questions at the end. Just to mention as well, so the health checkup is something that will be referenced later when we talk about the work permits and visas. But this is something that, as foreigners who come to Vietnam, we all have to get part of our work permits. We all need green lights from the health checkup. It's quite a simple procedure. I've done it 7 or 8 times now. You can be in and out in a couple of hours. It's quite straightforward, but it's part the corporate health checkup is part of the work permit application process. So it shows that you are fit to work. I always get told I'm overweight, but other than that, it tends to be quite straightforward. So just to give a bit of background on that. And then thanks so much, Dr. Van from Hanh. So we talked about education, we've talked about healthcare, but we need somewhere to live as well. And finding the right place to live is one of the most important considerations when relocating. So to help us better understand Vietnam's housing market, we're joined by WeiBoon Cheang from CBRE Vietnam. WeiBoon is the senior manager and head of tenant representation. So we're going to hear some market insights and practical relocation considerations for newcomers. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon from whatever time zone you're from. So I'm WeiBoon over here. Just a very quick intro about myself. I actually just relocated to Vietnam, Hanoi, where I'm currently based 6 months ago. I'm a Singaporean. I relocated with my family, but my family are all based in Saigon. They are mostly from District 2, so I'm very familiar with Saigon as well. I shuttle between Hanoi and Saigon all the time. What I do, just a quick introduction. I help companies find reasons to set up offices in Vietnam. I'm basically in the office leasing sector. And also by night, my hobby is comparing pickleball paddle because this is the popular game in Vietnam right now. Yeah. And then also on weekends, I will go for yoga, coffee, where this country is very popular with all the cafe. And of course, learning Vietnamese right now that I'm in this environment. Okay, so I shall just move to the topic. I think why Vietnam, why now? I think Marco has already mentioned why Vietnam. I think this is the right time at this point whereby the government have plans to wrap up a lot of rapid urbanization. So if you can see in Hanoi right now, they just released a 100-year master plan. So things are changing very quickly every day. When I come home, I can't recognize the road anymore because buildings are demolished, and then the next day they will have new hoardings up. So this is how fast the city is moving, and then they do have very ambitious targets. Like by 2030, they want a certain part of the city to be in a certain way. So I would say it's a very exciting moment right now. So if anyone who are very keen to join this emerging market, I think Vietnam is the right choice. Okay, then I'll move on to the next slide. And this slide will be the key consideration before anyone moves to Vietnam, including myself. I did ask a few experts before I came, like what are the costs and how is rental and security and things like that. And especially for a female myself with living in Hanoi by myself. And I want something to be as modern, but at the same time, I know that because from Singapore, I can't benchmark the same as in Vietnam. So I do have to manage my expectation. So from anyone who is in this call, you're from a developed city, you do need to manage your expectation a bit, okay? Because if you're willing to pay for a basic rental, you'll be getting Vietnamese style of houses, the boutique, small, 5-level kind of buildings. I see Lawrence nodding his head. Yeah, so this is the kind of standard. It's not bad, but it's just it's filled with a lot of locals. And if you're okay with it, I think that's fine. That will set you like around 10 million dong, which is around 500 USD right now. I think they're about in Hanoi city and also in Ho Chi Minh. But of course, if you want to be part of a bigger international community, like an expat area, for Hanoi, be the West Lake. For Ho Chi Minh, it will be the D2 Thao Dien. Then renters are at 30 to 40% higher. So when I first came in, I stay at the expat area, a service apartment, because I know that cleaning is cheap and affordable, so I outsource everything to cleaners. That set me like a 26 million, which is 1,000 USD a month for my rental. And that takes up quite a substantial portion of my monthly budgeting as well. And then because of that, I have to reduce my transportation and my food, even though it's already very affordable, but you save what you can, right? And then just recently last week, I found a better place near the office. And then so I just moved there. No more cleaning. I have to be my own cleaner. But then I saved a big portion of my rental. So the rental have actually dropped like 30 to 40%. So that is something that you have to weigh the pros and cons and see which kind of lifestyle suits you. Of course, if you're coming with a family, you need a nanny, you need a cleaner, definitely. Maybe you need a cook, a driver. So these are the costs that add up as well. But then if your company is paying, then that's fine. So if you can see just a generic breakdown, an average rental of how much you're spending in terms of food, entertainment, your health and fitness. So I would say the rental is always taking up the biggest portion of your budget. So every month you're expected to spend around 2,006 USD. Of course, it depends on individual lifestyle. And then if you're in Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi, there are so many entertainment going on every day. In the day, there are coffee joints. At night, there are parties. You tend to spend because you are in a very happy mood. So these are the things that I need to highlight as well, coming from a personal experience. Okay, and okay, so lifestyle quality beyond the price tag. I would say, safety-wise, it's very safe over here. Of course, you need to be vigilant and take care of your valuables as well. No crime doesn't mean low crime. Okay, from where I'm from, Singapore is always is very safe, but there's still crime, there's still accidents happening. So we just need to be careful. Health insurance. If you're an expat, I believe the company covers for you and with your spouse and your dependents as well. So I don't think it's something that will take up a big cost, but otherwise it isn't too expensive. I think there are health experts in this call that can actually address this question. International school, Marco have mentioned before. GP clinic, I have not visited any clinic so far. I'm keeping myself healthy. But then if there is one, I heard from my colleague that it's between $30 to $60 per visit. But it depends, again, it depends on the clinic that you're visiting. But one last thing that I really want to share is coming from my own personal point of view is because we come from the developed cities that our air is much more cleaner. Vietnam is developing. We understand that. So this is the trade-off that you get for this good quality of lifestyle. But then there's always the Xiaomi air purifier or any bigger brand's air purifier that can resolve the bad air quality in Vietnam. Okay, and just a very quick generic price landscape that you're looking right now and at how much per square meter that prices are for residential property. These might not be the real numbers because projects are, they're releasing almost every week. The government is ramping up as well. But I have to say prices, even in Hanoi, like second tier cities, prices have already grown like 30 to 50% from the last 2 years. CapitaLand have actually launched so many projects, more than 20 projects in these 2 years, in more than the number of projects they've launched in the 30 years in Vietnam. But I think this will be the secondary consideration because the first thing will be renting, knowing which area is your favorite area, and then, settling down first before coming to buying a property in Vietnam. Of course, if everything goes well, just as a foreigner, we just need to know that there is a 50-year lease. There's this rate book if we want to buy, so you only have that 50-year tenure. And other than that, you just have to pay up front and of course check on the monthly mortgage and the interest by the bank at that point of time when you're purchasing the property. Okay, and so after hearing these few slides from me, I think if you're still considering if Vietnam is good for you, just these are the key takeaway. Go. if you really want a change of environment, if you are very keen to work in a very emerging economy with more than 50 million of young population here. So I came here, I became the oldest, and they all call me Chi. But when I'm in Singapore, I'm actually one of the youngest. Yeah, and then of course, if you want good quality of life, and once in a while you can have a Michelin restaurant in Vietnam. And of course, and a different kind of a lifestyle. I think it's a very vibrant. And then on weekends, you can go on like different cities like Da Nang or other parts of the small islands of Vietnam. So if this is something that you're looking for in life and moving with your family and a bigger space, Vietnam is the right place. Of course, there are 3 cities right now, 3 key cities. They are on the top of the list, but Da Nang, I have to put a disclaimer that during a certain period of months, like summer, especially now, that is the flood season. So you do have to keep a lookout on the type of houses you are staying, and of course, safety and security, because things were put onto a standstill during a certain period of time in Da Nang. Same for Hanoi as well. Hanoi, we have like a flood season, typhoon season in the 3rd quarter of the year. So you might want to keep a lookout and see that if this is something you want to incorporate in your lifestyle. But if you like 4 seasons, Hanoi is the choice. You get the taste of your 4 seasons. Other than that, if you love the sun, the beach, Ho Chi Minh and Da Nang will be the preferred choice. Okay, and I think that will be the last slide that I have, right? A link.
I think this is the last slides of your
Yeah.
presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, Lawrence, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. We've had quite a few questions coming in, so I'll hold those over to the end.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so thanks for the questions. Keep them coming in. I'm making a note as we go along. It's interesting. Some of these questions are ones that I also was
Yeah.
thinking about before I came here. But I mean, housing is so important. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We're going to move on now to talk about the legal and regulatory requirements. So, like all countries, when we emigrate, we have to fulfill certain criteria. So our next speaker, Vincent Li, who's from InCorp Vietnam, is going to talk us through visas, work permits, and key compliance requirements for foreign professionals. I mean, just from personal experience, we've all been through this. It can sound daunting at first, but it's not as complicated as it might first appear, and I'm sure Vincent will talk us through it now. So I'm going to hand over to Vincent.
Thank you very much. So, hi everyone. My name is Vincent. So, a little bit more about me. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I got my degree, legal degree from the UK, and then was practicing law in Hong Kong actually for 5 years before relocating back to Vietnam because my mom is from Vietnam and my dad is from Hong Kong. So that's the reason why I'm currently residing in Ho Chi Minh. So I totally agree with what the other speaker said. Everything in Vietnam is developing very greatly. It's very vibrant. For example, the average age of a Saigonese is only 28 years old. So it's a very vibrant, it's a very energetic city. So a little bit more about ISHCMC or InCorp. So we are actually a Singapore-based company, a Singapore headquartered company, and we have different service providers across different cities in the world. So ranging from legal to tax to accounting to other corporate service, for example, recruitment, HR, we can definitely cover that. And on the slide, this shows that what we can do as a full service company. So from advisory to actually opening a company for you in Vietnam to providing accounting, tax services, etc. So now let's move on to the main bit. So I would say that this may not be the most exciting part of the presentation today, but it may happen to be a pretty solid or useful one for you as you step your foot into Vietnam. So the first thing that you need to be aware of is a lot of people talk about the visa process. But when you talk about the visa processes, there are actually 4 layers under this broad umbrella term. And each would actually serve different purposes. For example, so the first layer that we need to mention or we need to be aware of is the entry part. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is whether you can actually enter Vietnam in a legitimate way or not. So in that, the immigration authority would be responsible for that. And then the second question you need to ask yourself is whether you can actually work in Vietnam, because being able to enter into Vietnam doesn't mean that you can work in Vietnam. Then the third question is residence, whether you can actually remain and re-enter Vietnam in the long term. And last but not least, the ongoing compliance. So getting a TRC, getting a work permit doesn't mean that you're safe from the moment you get that permit, because the authority will need to ensure that what you do, your role and your employment arrangement are actually compliant and reflective of what you apply or what you report to the authority. So I'm aware that my slide may be a little bit of arranged in the legalese or in a detailed way, but in my presentation I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter. So if you need any reference to any particular framework or particular arrangement, you can always you're always welcome to refer back to the slide. So let's start with the first stage. The first question is how you enter into Vietnam. So the most normal visa that you would come across or you would have heard of will be the EV, the electronic visa. So the maximum stay is 90 days. So be aware of that. This is only the statutory maximum visa validity. So based on the actual circumstances, the authority may grant less than actually this maximum statutory period. So for the DM1, this is where you are working with a Vietnamese legal entity, but you're coming to Vietnam for, let's say, business activities for a shorter time period. Let's say you come here for an exhibition, etc. As for LD1 and LD2, they are basically the more typical work permit for workers who are intending to stay here for the longer period. So LD1 are basically those with a work permit exemption regime. For example, you're an investor or you're actually going through an intra-company transfer, etc. So typically, it will be the documentation will be easier. For LD2, that's the typical part whereby a typical foreign worker would need in order to work in order to work in Vietnam. As for DT1 to 4, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, there is actually an investor threshold according to the immigration law. So ranging from DT1 to DT4, basically based on how much the investment amount, and also basically there are some ancillary conditions regarding the nature of the investment that you make as well. And last but not least, if you have a family, then you will need to also apply for TT for them. So they are the visa for qualifying family members or your dependents. And the maximum period is 12 months, and you have to apply for every single one of them. For so rather than let's say a full family visa, you have to apply for a separate visa for every single one of your kids or your other half. So next, let's talk about the work permit eligibility and supporting evidence. So there are actually 4 key positions that you need to be aware of. So the first one is manager. The second one is executive director. The third one is expert. And the last is technical worker. In Vietnam, you have to show to the local authorities that the company hiring you they actually have a legitimate purpose, or they have a legitimate reason to hire you from overseas rather than hiring you from a local Vietnamese job market. So for example, if you're applying through the manager position, then you have to show that, oh, actually, there's a document whereby the company approve you as the manager. And as I mentioned before, the authority will check that in reality on an ongoing basis, whether you're actually working as a manager or not, or whether you're just a junior employee. For executive director, again, you have to prove that you're actually in the management or in the leadership of a branch or representative office or an organizational unit. If you're applying under the expert stream, then you have to show that you're an expert in, let's say, you're a lawyer or you're a scientist or you're a researcher in biomedical science, etc. And last but not least, if you're a technical worker, then you have to prove that you have relevant technical training or experience. So in Vietnam, there's a bunch of document where in combination they call it a dossier. So you have to give the dossier with all the documents ready, and they will review everything in one go. So something that to bear in mind. So there are two very important types of certificate. The first one is the health certificate. So you can actually apply it also. You can get it locally, or you can get it from foreign cities. But generally speaking, the certificate should generally be no more than 12-month old. And for the criminal record document, it should be issued no more than 6 months before the application. So now let's talk about the process very briefly. So as I mentioned before, it is if you're signing under a local labor contract law, a local labor contract, then you have the first step is actually for the company to prove it to the authorities that, oh, we actually cannot hire a similar talent in the local market, and therefore we have to hire it, let's say from Hong Kong, from Canada, etc. So the first thing that the company has to do is to actually do a Vietnamese recruitment post and to advertise the position to Vietnamese workers. And then after that, that will be the application windows. So it should be applied within 60 days, but at least 10 days before the actual start of the employment. And the good news is the authority would only take 10 working days to complete the filing and to give you a response after the review. But something to bear in mind is the 10 working days calculation doesn't actually start until you have actually filled in all the complete documentations. So from my personal experience, it actually took me a while to get the criminal record. And because currently Vietnam is undergoing a very aggressive plan to digitalize their administrative work. So this is actually quite interesting. So I was actually applying for my criminal record, and then according to the instructions online, I actually went to the police station, only to be redirected to the Department of Justice to actually do the process. But then when I actually went into the room of the Department of Justice, they told me that, oh, actually now everything is online, so I cannot do it in person. And then I actually have to go on to what they call the VNIED website. But then there's actually another problem, because as a foreigner, I cannot get an account on the VNIED. So at the end, I actually need to get a notary from a local office in order to do that. So I think the lesson learned from this is the regulations and the legal arrangement in Vietnam is actually is improving, but it's also changing very rapidly. So you have to check with the professionals and the authorities on a very regular basis to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and to make sure that you don't actually waste your time juggling between different authorities. So the next thing is, as I mentioned before, there will be you may be qualified for an exemption for work permit, but having an availability or a capacity to be exempt doesn't mean that it's procedure free, or you don't have to do anything. So for the sake of easy reference, I've listed out a few selected categories that are more key or are more important to the other ones. So there are a total of, I think, 25 categories under the law, but these are the more prominent ones. For example, if you're a chairperson or board member, or you're a professional working in Vietnam short term, or you're an intra-corporate transferee, or you're a specialist, etc., then you may actually, there are actually two routes. So either you need to notify the authority, or you need to actually go through a formal exemption confirmation. So the details of which I've already set in the table, so you can refer to it according to your circumstances. And for this, again, the authority would normally take 5 working days. So instead of 10 for the previous case, but so here, because it's exemption circumstances, so they would actually take a fewer days in order to complete the confirmation. But again, bear in mind that this clock doesn't actually start until you have all the documents ready for the authorities to review. Then let's talk about the TRC and the dependents. So let me just remind you that this is in relation to whether you can reside or stay or get back to Vietnam for a longer term. So from DT1 to DT3, these are basically for investors. For TT, they're for dependents. LD1 and LD2 are basically for the workers. So because I'm aware of the time, so I will not go through every single one of them. But something important that I need to remind every single one of you is for the TRC, it must expire at least 30 days before the expiration of your own passport to make sure that they want to make sure that the TRC actually expires before the expiration of the passport, so that there will be a little leeway for the authority to make sure that there will be no overlapping of the time period. And for the TRC registration and the sponsor document, make sure every document is completed in the dossier before the actual submission. So I have 2 more slides, and this is more about the ongoing compliance after you actually finally successfully get all the documentations and the license and everything. So if there is some trigger events, for example, if you are now working in another province, or if you actually change your name, nationality, or passport, etc., or you change your position in your job, or your permit is actually approaching expiry, then there are actually a fixed set of response that you are required to do. For example, you need to notify the authority, or you need to actually access whether you need to apply for a reissuance of the work permit, or whether you need to retrieve or return document, etc. So here, this slide is about the corporate action plan and the common failure points. If you have your own business or you're working for a corporate, then this slide may be useful for you. So you can refer to this slide for what I call the trigger event situation. For example, before assignment, what you need to do, and before you travel, this is the thing that you need to do, etc. So this is actually listed out in a timeline format, so you can very easily refer to each particular milestone before you come to Vietnam and enjoy your life and enjoy your banh mi at the end of the day. So last but not least, let me just do a very quick summary. So first of all, visa is actually not work authorization. So getting a visa doesn't mean that you can automatically work in Vietnam. And the statutory review is actually 10 working days. But it only starts after you completed all the documents you get, for example, the criminal record, you get the health certificate, etc. And the actual job, employer, and work location, they must remain aligned with what you actually apply and report to the authority. So last but not least, I leave my contact here. And if you want to talk to me about market entry, visa, or anything, tax, accounting, all these, what I call the boring but necessary corporate stuff, then you're welcome to reach me on LinkedIn or just shoot me a WhatsApp, or happy to do, I'm actually open a complimentary 30-minute chat for 5 people every single month. So feel free to scan the QR code and feel free to talk to me on any channel that may be most convenient to you. But other than that, I've done my presentation. So thank you very much for this opportunity again, and hope to talk to you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Vincent. Yeah, I mean, if there's one sort of take-home message from that, it's you know, take some professional advice when when coming to Vietnam. Again, you know, I've been through this several times. I'm sure Marco and others on the call have. It's, you know, it can look complicated, and in some respects it is, but the professionals know how to do it. So a bit of personal experience, I've always just left it in the hands of the professionals. So thanks so much for that. So we've got one more presentation before we move on to the Q&A. And I mean, this will be important for people considering coming here. Some might be transferring within companies. Some might be partners of people transferring within companies and who are wondering, what will the job market look like? You know, how do I find work? What are the the salaries and that kind of thing. So I'm delighted to hand over to Mike Herbert, who is Deputy CEO of TalentNet. So Mike will talk about some current job market trends, insights for professionals thinking about moving to Vietnam. I'll hand over to Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to meet. I'm not sure which screen you're seeing. Are you seeing my presenter view or my
We're seeing the presenter screen.
okay. Let me swap that. Is that better?
No, the first one.
Oh, okay. All right. So thank you. Good morning, and thanks again for everyone joining the Cancham relocation webinar. My name is Mike Hebert, and I'm Deputy CEO of TalentNet, Vietnam's leading locally owned HR firm. And my slot here today is to talk about employment opportunities and give you my honest version, not the brochure version, of what expats coming into Vietnam need to be looking at when thinking about careers. So I do have to start with a small confession. I actually did not come to Vietnam with a job. I came here in 2015 on a sabbatical. I had no job, no real plan, no idea if I'd be staying for 3 months or 6 months. I came here with my fiance at the time, and it was her plan to come to Vietnam, and I was just tagging along and to see if it's something I could really live up to and really find my place. 11 years later, I'm in an executive role at one of Vietnam's largest HR firms. I built a business here. I survived the pandemic here. I'm still here. And I even worked for the international school at one point, not so long ago, that presented earlier. So yes, Marco was my boss. So when I talk about career opportunity in Vietnam, I'm not really reading from a report. I will share some updates, but I'm really talking about my own experience. And I don't need to go into the GDP growth again. You've heard this a few times today and the foreign investment part. But I think the momentum in Vietnam is really driving a lot of new opportunities. When we look at manufacturing growth, we think about 116% growth over the last 10 years. The big players are here, the Samsungs, the Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, Nike, IKEA are all manufacturing here in Vietnam. And even Canadian players like Lululemon calls Vietnam home for the majority of its production. Now, although those are manufacturing roles, all of the industries that support that, whether that be service firms like ourselves or like ISHCMC, the schools that support families who are working across all of those sectors, create a really an economic situation that drives a lot of careers and growth for people here, not only Vietnamese, but expats as well. However, the market reality is it's not like you're just going to come here and find a job right away. Either if you're lucky and you're moving here with a job, that's one way. If you're potentially looking to invest and start a business, that's another way. And if you're actually just moving here because you're really interested in Vietnam and you're hoping to secure work, I can give you a little bit more information about that. So when we look at first is the roles that are being created in Vietnam are being created faster than the talent available that can be filled. So every new factory, every new regional headquarter, every new tech center needs management. They need country managers, financial experts, operational leaders, educators, if we're talking about schools, and the demand is real. 64% of Asian businesses and those in Vietnam as well rank talent shortage as their number one HR issue today. And that's from Mercer. That's a report that we run here in Vietnam. So if you have 10 to 15 years of functional experience in another country, you can speak English or even better Vietnamese or another Asian language. There's a real demand here for people to work on the ground. Probably not the same kind of demand that we are seeing in Canada. Second, the market is very relationship driven, not really platform driven. So although you might see some roles being advertised through online networks, through potential search firms, referrals remain the number one. And finding your next role on LinkedIn, it might be, you might be seeing a lot of jobs there, but the reality is most people are finding jobs in Vietnam through their own relationships, through the networks they're building, and their personal brand. Finally, I think complexity is in the rewards that are available. I think it's something people should be aware of. Vietnam is in a huge regulatory cycle. There's a new employment law, new work permit reforms, a personal income tax restructure that is all coming live in 2026. And there's a constraint in the growth from market demand and organizational capability. Companies have the capital and the ambition to grow. What they really need is people who can build systems in uncertain conditions. And that profile is really in demand today in Vietnam. They're not looking for people who are just comfortable doing the status quo. They really want entrepreneurial mindset, commercial mindset, and a leadership mindset. Most expats are here to help build a future workforce in Vietnam. So how do you actually find work in Vietnam? As I said, job boards are more of a signal, not a source. And using them can help you to understand what sectors are hiring, what kind of skills are in demand, but don't expect from overseas that you can land a job in Vietnam. Your network, whether it be the chambers or attending industry events, or I have done this a lot more in the last few years, building yourself a personal brand on LinkedIn is really where conversations begin. And from there, you can potentially find a role. And all the roles that I've had in Vietnam outside of my own company have been through my relationships. They did not come from me applying on a job. I know Vincent covered it earlier, but I do want to cover the reinforce from an employer side that securing a work permit is very important, and visa timelines and how long it's going to take you to move here becomes a big question mark for companies that are hiring. So I often recommend that if you're not coming with an employer and moving to Vietnam, it's very hard to look for a job until you're actually here on the ground, you have an address, and you've started, mingling and making a name for yourself. So the next part is I'm going to try and give you 5 quick tips, 1 minute each, about things that I've learned along the way that could help you find a role or help you secure a long-term career here in Vietnam. So the first one is arrive with a skill, not just curiosity. Vietnam doesn't really need more generalist expats. It really is looking for people who have a certain type of skill and a high demand potential experience in a certain sector that can bring in that skill, that expertise, and level up the local workforce that's in place. Building strong connections. So pick one chamber and go deep. I'm partial to Cancham. I'm on the board of Cancham. So I'll say it plainly. This is a great place to start. The mistake that I did, and I see a lot of expats do, is they go to about 5 to 10 different chamber events a month. They collect a bunch of cards and they don't know really why nothing is converting. I would always recommend just pick one community, show up consistently at all their events, become a known face, volunteer if you can, and then with time, the entire business community in Vietnam will start to know you and give you more opportunities. The next is don't just build relationships with the expats. Try to really find relationships to expand on with Vietnamese, whether that be colleagues or other Vietnamese. The expat community here is really warm. It's welcoming. It feels really great. But every 2 to 3 years, it rotates. And all the expats who are on 2-year contracts, they leave and new ones appear. And so if your entire network is expats, you're just going to get a network that's changing over, and it can become quite exhausting. So I would recommend either connect with more Vietnamese or find expats who are building businesses in Vietnam, or have been here on 2 or 3 contracts already, and potentially have some investments in the country. Know your worth. I think this is a really important one. Expat packages are compressing these big, sexy expat packages that existed in the past that included housing allowance, school fees fully paid, business class flights 2 or 3 times a year, additional help, whether it be a driver or a nanny or a house helper, all of that included, not really exists anymore. There's only a few, maybe very senior roles that get that type of package. So it's important to understand what the salary data is in Vietnam. You can work with groups like TalentNet, and we have all of that data available, and you can know where your type of role fits and what kind of salary expectations for both Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And I think that's one of the aspects that can really help you to negotiate. The other one is not really a number, it's the skills. So we are seeing that people with AI skills are being hired around 30 times faster today than the rest of the market. So if you haven't really spent time in AI or building your skill set in that area, I'd recommend doing that today. Take online, you can do LinkedIn courses, you can do online free courses, but building this up and putting it in your CV and being able to speak to it, I think is a great way to stand out. And then the last one is really committing to Vietnam. We kind of have a term of anyone in my circle that I meet that's been in Vietnam less than 3 months or 6 months, I don't really put too much time or effort into building a friendship with them. It's not to say that they're not great people. It's just that there are so many people coming through Vietnam for short term that people who do invest and commit to Vietnam, they're a little bit, you can tell right away. You can tell by where they live, how they live, what they're doing on holidays. Are they just flying back to their home country, or are they actually visiting throughout Vietnam? As Marco said earlier, he's going to Hanoi. He's a head of school. He should be traveling to Europe, but no, he's spending more time in Vietnam in the month of June. That shows people who are here that those are people who are here to stay. So by 2030, Gen Z in Vietnam will be the largest workforce segment, and this is a workforce that you will be training and building up now. And they are on social media. They're very active in TikTok and other channels, and they want people who are also not going to be moving away. They want leaders that are here and going to invest in them and care for them. And so I think that committing to Vietnam is a really important part. Once you've made it here, once you've landed, if you feel it's the right place for you, whether it's investing and buying a property, whether that's renting or having your own scooter or getting a car, whatever that is, it really shows to people here that you care about the country and you care about being here long term. So just before I pass it back to Lawrence, I just want to say a quick word about TalentNet. We are Vietnam's #1 locally owned HR firm. We've been at it for nearly 20 years. We work across HR outsourcing, payroll, HR consulting, executive search. We have a training program through our TalentNet Academy. We have corporate services for companies similar to ISHCMC entering the market. We have over 1,000 clients, of which the majority are Fortune 500 companies operating here in Vietnam. And we manage over 12,000 outsourced employees working in sales factory roles across 300 multinational companies. If you're making a move here, we are really the top partner that understands the market when it comes to HR, all things HR. So come and find us. So here's a link to my profile. I came here in 2015, no job, no plan. 11 years later, I would not trade it. I'm happy to stay here. I'm happy to live in Vietnam. It's a fast-growing economy, one of the fastest in the world. The opportunity is really genuine, but it rewards people who commit, who specialize, and who build trust on the ground, and those who have arrived prepared. If that's you, come find me later. I'm on LinkedIn, or here's my contact details. Happy to help you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I encourage you all to follow Mike on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan. Fantastic. I'm going to open now to the Q&A. So we've had some questions in the comments. So the first question, there's a couple for Marco. The first one would be, are there meaningful distinctions among schools by particular nationalities? And it's a two-part question. Is it possible to transfer between international schools? I assume that means like either um, perhaps mid-year or perhaps between primary and secondary, that kind of thing.
Hi. Yes, let me take both questions. Firstly, I think the question, if I saw it coming in on the feed, was specifically around national identity, heritage, and
Yeah.
Korean community. So here in Ho Chi Minh City, there is a Korean school discrete with a curriculum that's very much aligned to what would be expected within South Korea. What I would say, however, is if you take an example of a school such as mine and a number of others, the second largest demographic within that school is Korean. And so we have a number of ways in which we support the community. We have a dedicated Korean liaison who helps families who are not first language English at home make connection with the school, answer their questions. We have a dedicated support for Korean students who are going to be repositioning back into the Korean system, recognizable for families. We also we're actually growing our capacity and our direction of students who are going back to Korea for university options. What I would say, however, is that one of the great advantages of coming overseas and supporting relocation for families is to give a genuine international flavor to the education experience of your sons and daughters. It adds a layer and an experience which is quite unique. It's one of the differentiators that they will have in a very competitive marketplace to be able to draw on that experience. So my suggestion and proposal to anyone who's considering this is go into the school, engage with the school, understand how do you cater for my sons and daughters' needs, however you perceive those. And also then how do you cater for their repositioning into perhaps a home educational system which is discrete from the one that schools such as mine is offering? Because there is an answer to that, but it's nuanced to your need. Is it possible to move between schools? Yes, it is. But of course, there are contractual terms. I've been 18 years ahead of school. I've been 35 years in education. I would always caution parents about what I would call the supermarket approach to education. If there's an issue within a school, work very hard with the school to address that issue. It is in the benefit of your child to allow them to understand that where difficulties are faced, then there are ways to solve those difficulties as opposed to removing yourself from it. Now, I'm not sure if the question was really slanted like that, but it's my default reaction whenever an issue of should we jump a school, there's usually an issue behind it. Address the issue. Don't look for the new school as a default. But it is possible. You just have to watch what the contractual terms and notifications are. And as long as you see out those terms, then there's no reason why you can't move on to another school within the city or elsewhere. And one of the things is an international school such as ours, we do a lot of is supporting families in their next move and encouraging them to look at particular options that we think are going to suit them well. And we do that in various parts of the world.
Thank you very much. We've got another question now. It was an open question, but I want to address it to Marco first. And this is because this is something I, as a parent here, think about. It's about air quality. So the question was around for people with allergies and asthma. Now I have both of those, and I've been here 10 years, and I've not noticed a worsening in either condition. I wondered how did the schools address the issue of air quality? Because in Hanoi, Hanoi is worse than Ho Chi Minh on average, but Ho Chi Minh it is nevertheless an issue.
So it is an issue. I think, Lawrence, your answer is a good balanced answer because it is an issue, but it's not an acute issue. I've worked and operated within mainland China where air quality issues are much worse. And we know that there are different parts of the world where it's even more acute than we face here. International schools will monitor air quality both outside and inside the building. So within the two campuses that we run, we have air quality management systems. We have air filters that we operate throughout the building. We therefore track on a daily basis the quality throughout the day, and if the index goes above a certain level, then we stop outdoor activities. We don't necessarily stop people going outside, but if it's particularly acute, we would bring particularly young children indoors. So we manage it proactively. I mean, we're in an environment where we operate both indoors and outdoors. It's the nature of living in this part of the world. So in the vast majority of the year, it's not an issue. But it's like other issues, and most recently in the build up to the summer holidays that we're now into here, we were bringing in children from the outdoors for extreme heat and making sure that they were properly sun protected as a standard, but then not overexposing themselves to physical activity in that heat. So it's just proactive management is the answer, really.
Brilliant, thanks. Just while we're on the subject of schools, there's one more that's just come in. How do schools like ISHCMC welcome students with no English whatsoever? I think is the students coming from Europe that are non-English speaking. What support is available, I suppose?
So we are definitely open to students with that background. We do assess students for their English level, and we have intensive programs for a number of students who come in. This is one of the points which I said earlier, not to be too phased about waiting lists, but if you have a particular learning need, and English language acquisition is the most common one that most of our students have, because most families at the school from wherever part of the world they're coming from are not necessarily English language first language. So we have an intensive program. We can support that, but there are limits to that as well. We also then are more flexible depending on the age and stage. The younger the learner, the more flexibility. As we go through the school years, certainly as we reach what we would refer to as high school at ISHCMC, then because of the curriculum and academic program which is delivered in English, we are expecting certain levels of competency within that program for the students to have success within their curriculum. And if they haven't reached a certain level of English by that point, then they are going to struggle. That's not to say they can't find a place, but we'll have a very honest conversation with families as to what's the program that they can access in our English language curriculum.
Brilliant, thank you. One for WeiBoon now. Are there lots of apartments in Hanoi and Tenant that foreigners are able to purchase, or are supplies more limited?
The answer is a very big yes. Lots of options. The supply are in abundance. Many apartments for purchase in both Da Nang and in Hanoi for sure. But there's a certain caveat whereby certain developers, they only restrict to locals. But that's only a small portion. But other than that, there are always lots of choices for foreigners to choose from.
Thanks. And there's a question that's come in from someone else, a related question.
Okay.
And I'll address the broader question in a little bit, but what about mortgages for foreigners? Is that something that's difficult to do, accessing credit for that?
That is a very question that it depends on the individual as well. Lawrence, that's a very good question. I won't say it's hard, because if it's hard, then there won't be a lot of influx of foreigners coming in to buy. So there's definitely some understanding that we will have to do here as a foreigner if we want to purchase. But it's also depending on at the point of purchase the kind of a special package that the developer give as well. Because I do understand that sometimes when you buy on the spot or through a certain channel or through the agents, there is kind of like if you pay one time or if you pay like a certain kind of percentage, there is the different incentive. So that I can't give a definite answer here, but if any individuals here within the group would like to find out more, can just feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll be able to advise further.
Thanks. And I think this is from the same question, but I think these would be for Vincent. How easy is it to open bank accounts and to access funds in Vietnam
Yeah,
as a foreigner?
Yeah, so it is actually not too difficult. So it really depends on. So if you're opening an account individually, then I would actually suggest that maybe you need a more local bank. For example, there's one called BIDV, etc. So because for me, the personal experience is I have a HSBC account, but then sometime when I scan the code, let's say going to vendors, etc., on the street, then the HSBC app doesn't actually work for the for the QR code. So if you're considering settling here for the long term, so maybe opening an account with the local bank would be better than, let's say, foreign overseas bank. If you're opening a company, then it is good to note that they actually do not have a general statutory minimum requirement or a capital requirement. So in Vietnam, under the law here, they would determine whether the capital requirement, they would determine it on a case by case basis. So there is no one size fits all approach whereby they say that, oh, it has to be 10,000 US dollar or whatnot. So everything is consider on a case by case basis. Yeah, but we would suggest at least for an SME to open up a business, at least we should have at least about 15K US dollar as the registered capital.
Yeah, and just to echo that point, so for those who've never been here, QR codes, it's all about QR codes now. And I'm with Standard Chartered, and I can't do QR codes on the app, and it drives me insane. So just to echo that point, local bank is good because when you're out, getting coffee and things, banh mi, whatever it is, used to be cash was king. But I mean, the pace of change here is incredible. Um, now it's all about QR codes. So get a bank with an app that does those. That would be a good bit of advice. Um, I think this one would be for Vincent as well. Someone's asking about creating a social enterprise. I'm not sure if you can speak about that at all.
Yeah, so I think it is possible, but of course it really depends on it depends more on the business line. For example, if it's because in Vietnam you can do any business unless it is negatively put in the prohibited or restricted list. So it really depends on the business line. Because there are something, let's say, that would be relevant to the national security or sensitive data of the government, then in that case, either it will be outright prohibited, or let's say the company structure, then you will need to have someone, a local Vietnamese to be one of the shareholders. So I'm afraid I may not be able to give a black or white one size fits all answer, but by principle, as long as it's not prohibited by the negative list, then it can be done.
Brilliant, thanks. I think this one from Mike. Someone's asking about mental health in the workplace. So the question was, how is the government and enterprises addressing this? I'm not sure we can discuss the government side here, but from a corporate side, Mike, what's the trend on how companies are addressing mental health issues in the workplace?
I think when we look at the majority of the larger international companies, we are seeing that with ESG practices and governance, companies are starting to really put not only from a rewards and benefit aspect of mental health assistance or telehealth lines in place, but they're also putting full kind of a governance around workplace mental health and what programs and what training are in place. So we're seeing a lot of the international companies, whether it be banks like HSBC or international schools, going beyond um, simply providing a phone number or a resource, but providing training to their staff, whether it be about personal finances, about parenting, about workplace, balance flexibility between their work and their personal time. So looking at different tool sets. The hospitals and the majority of the international hospitals also have a lot of resources available in Vietnam, depending on what mental health challenge certain individuals are facing. From a government perspective, I can't speak directly for it, but I would say that over the last 10 years, going from when I first arrived, there was zero talk of mental health in any aspect of government. And now today we are seeing it in in school curriculums. We are seeing safeguarding and conversations around international schools, around the schools. International schools have always done safeguarding, but now we're seeing it in bilingual schools and even in public schools starting to be a topic of conversation. And so I think the government is seeing the need for it. It's not to the place, if I'm being honest, of Canada or Europe or potentially Singapore, but it is moving. I guess it is a topic of conversation in government, and it is something that the majority of international employers are taking seriously.
So I'm interested as well, Marco. How does that how do schools address issues of men? I mean, I'm just aware that these are issues with teenagers in particular as well. How do schools address this?
So it's addressed through our mental health as part of our wellbeing curriculum. Schools such as my own has a very specific bespoke one called POSISH, which is a positive health and well-being program. There is a broader issue, I think, that Mike touched us on here. There's specifically to do with mental health, but we're in general the issue of special needs, special educational needs. Individual schools have their own programs, and for those who are coming in from overseas, where you would expect a breadth of provision, it is one of the key areas that you should inquire with particular schools. The standard breadth of provision to scaffold support for students is not as common as you would find in other parts of the world. There are schools that do it. My own is one. There are others, but you do need to think quite specifically if you understand that your own son or daughter has a particular profile of need, how that's going to be met here in Vietnam.
Thank you. One, I think perhaps for Vincent, how easy is it for foreigners to retire in Vietnam?
I think retirement in Vietnam is actually, I mean, coming from Hong Kong, I think definitely the living standard here is quite pretty chill, and then the quality of life is very chill as well, and the pricing, everything is much cheaper. So I think it's a very good retirement location. And in terms of, I think it's less about the legal sense, it's more about the quality of living. So so I think, for example, the air quality is a real concern because a lot of people actually wear masks even when they're walking the street, and also the pavement and everything, the infrastructure is not very well developed, at least at certain part of, let's say, Ho Chi Minh, even though the government is working very hard on it. So I think it's a very good destination, but it will be very different from, let's say, developed city like Hong Kong, Canada, etc. Yeah.
But one of the challenges is that for foreigners who don't have a work permit, who want to retire in Vietnam, the visa aspect is a question, no, for Vincent. They would have, I believe they have to be on a 90-day visa, or have a small company where they're a consultant or some sort of business that they're doing to remain somewhat active. But it's also from a legal perspective, it's maybe not as clear, but if you go to Da Nang or you go to Vũng Tàu or beach cities, there are many retirees from foreign countries living in Vietnam and having a good life. I think it may become a bigger challenge if they're hospitalized or have to be in Vietnam, we'll say in their 90s or late 80s, where that might become a challenge. But I do feel the government is moving towards probably something closer to Malaysia or other countries to provide some sort of longer term visa potential.
One more for Vincent. Do local banks accept foreign IDs for personal accounts or Vietnamese IDs? I mean, I'm guessing that might refer to like, would you need a TRC to open a bank account?
I have actually done it myself. So they actually accept I believe it depends on the individual bank's practice, but for the one that I did, actually they accept foreign ID. So it should not be a problem to actually apply through a foreign ID. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it several times, and I think from let's remember, I think I had to show. Oh, you know what? I can't. I'm not going to give it because I can't remember now, and I don't want to give bad.
Yeah, it depends more on the bank's KYC policies, I think. So
Yeah, great. One more for Mike. Mike, can you talk a bit more about building a personal network here? Like how you go, some more advice on how to go about that, and because I mean, likewise, I turned up in Vietnam 10 years ago. I knew no one. I knew nothing. Not a scrap of language. And likewise, I found that the personal network was, the most important thing. So could you talk a bit more uh, about how to build that network?
I think if I look at the first groups of people that I met in Vietnam 10 years ago or 11 years ago, they're not the same people that I am close to today. Doesn't mean that they were bad or anything. It's just that in the first go, I think you're trying to find a tribe. You're trying to find people that are similar, that you can at least have a beer or go for dinner or go to the gym and have a companion that you can get along with, or you can have some engagement with. I think the good part about expat life is that everyone is coming from somewhere else and it's a common feeling. There's not a lot of foreigners who are here who've lived here for 40 years or grew up here. And so because of that, it's easy to meet people. And if you meet someone at a networking event and you find that they're likable people, you can invite them for lunch or a coffee and usually meet them within the same week. And then from there, build friendships. Vietnam is also an incredibly social place. So the majority of Vietnamese do not go home at the end of the day and go and cook every single day of the week. They go out right after work. They will grab a bite to eat, whether it be on a stool and a chair or a table, or they're going out to a restaurant or grabbing a few beers. So with that, it creates kind of a sense that the entire population is always out. There's tons of restaurants. Whether you drink or don't drink doesn't matter. But the messages, I think, at first is about finding people that you can find commonality with and find friends. I am a big fan of building a personal brand. And so whether that be Facebook or LinkedIn or something, I think regularly posting and being public, having your profile be public is an important aspect. Vietnamese community as well are very active on social media. And so it's common that people will come to you at different events and know who you are, especially if you're in a leadership role. And I wouldn't shy away from that. It's part of this part of the world. It's part of the culture we are here. So I think first I would say just go to events, be active, find something, whether it be Facebook. There's tons of events. It doesn't have to be a chamber. It can be anything. Pickleball is huge here. If you've never played, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is a good way to meet people. There's all kinds of sporting, there's board game communities. So find a community that you're interested in or you like and start there. make a few friends, and then from there you'll find your way.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Question here for, I would guess, Vincent, perhaps Mike, and I can talk a bit about this as well. Consulting agencies, is that a potential kind of business in Vietnam? I mean, the short answer is yes. I did it before I was in this role. I was a consultant. I was doing communications, but I know Mike's had some consulting, done some consulting work, but perhaps Vincent first could talk a little bit about consulting as a profession in Vietnam or starting a consulting business.
Sure, Lawrence, you're not alone because I actually started my own consulting business as well in the past. So yes, it can be 100% foreign owned. It's one of the most typical company nature that foreigners actually set up in Vietnam, and you don't need any sub-license, so it's very easy. Normally, it would take about only 1.5 months to 2 months, maybe less than that because it's a very simple setup. So yeah, definitely can be done. And yeah, that's just quite easy to be done.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, I did that for 4 or 5 years, and before I took up this role, I found it was helpful I had a professional services firm manage all the incorporation and compliance. That would be a sort of personal bit of advice, because I would have struggled to do that. But this is where the network that Mike talks about comes in. Is most of the work that I had was referrals and word of mouth. It was rare that I got work through competitive tenders or bidding. I did some, but most of it was I met someone who needed something and knew me and referred me to a friend. I'm not sure, Mike, if that echoes your experience as well.
Yeah, I would say on two fronts. If you're planning to live here and then you need a job and you set up a consulting company and then you're gonna do, I don't know, digital media consultancy for companies outside of Vietnam. I mean, I know a lot of people who live like that in Vietnam and do very well, but personal taxes and corporate taxes, and it's not something you find on a website in Vietnam and you can just do yourself. And I'm not saying that as a HR company or a firm that does this. I'm really saying I personally had issues where I had to pay something like 10,000 of back taxes on a tiny little company because I made mistakes in the first few years. So yeah, just use a firm. It's very cheap usually to hire a firm that can and do this on a monthly or quarterly basis. The one thing to kind of worry a little is if you expect to get business in Vietnam as a consultant from the first go, I would say don't expect any contract for at least a year. Vietnamese are not a big fan of consultants, just like the rest of the world, I think. And they really don't trust consultants who say they have so much years of experience abroad. They actually don't care about your experience abroad. They just care about what you've done in Vietnam. So it's kind of like applying for a job that say you need 3 years of experience, but you just graduated from university. So you need to kind of do some volunteer or do some work for free for a chamber or for a find anything that makes you look like you've done some work in Vietnam, and then use that to start telling people that you have a business in this country. So that's just more practical advice.
But yeah, I mean that aligns more or less with what I generally think a lot of us here have done. I mean, I started mine as a side hustle. I was at a different chamber of commerce at the time. People asked me to do some stuff on the side. I did. That grew and blossomed and so on. So yeah, I agree with that. I have one more question for Marco, and then but before I ask that, the final question for all of us is going to be, if you were moving to Vietnam now, what would be the best bit of advice that you wish someone had told you at the time? So think about that while I ask Marco this question. Um, so yes, there it is. What sort of skills do international students in Vietnam develop that prepare them for the global future that you were talking about before? And this is me asking as a parent.
Sure. I think the cultural awareness is one of the critical ones. I think the balance of what is a strong and distinctive host nation culture, but not a dominant culture. The way in which our students can celebrate their life in Vietnam without feeling that their own heritage, language, traditions, and facets of their identity are suppressed within a dominant culture. Having lived and worked in other parts of the world, I think Vietnam has a particular strength in that area compared to others, where the host culture does require by statute to be more significantly represented. And that's just the nature of the environment. So we can talk about the curriculum, we can talk about the educational support that individual schools can provide, but I think it's more about the flexibility of understanding of that diversity and internationalism, genuine internationalism, which is something for me that really stands out.
Brilliant, thanks. And I'm just being told that I need to wrap things up. So the question that I was going to ask, if we could have quick fire. So what would be the one bit of advice that you might give someone or to yourself that you wish someone had given to you when you first moved here? Start with Marco.
Yeah, I'll start off. I'm relatively new in country, 18 months. I think just be absolutely confident that no question is too stupid to ask. Whatever's on your mind, there's somebody who's going to answer it, and nobody's going to expect you to know the answer. That's why we're all here. That's why we want to help. Just ask a question.
Great. Let's go to WeiBoon.
For me, even relatively newer, 6 months in, I would say learn how Vietnam works, and then you become much more easier because you can't compare for the things where we are from, right?
Vincent?
Yeah.
I think it's just to enjoy your time here because a little bit of a sharing because I actually didn't think about living here at all. I came here as a backpacker, opened my company not knowing what to do. Eventually, I just bumped into someone who got me back into the corporate world. So I think it's just to enjoy life, talk to the people, enjoy your motorcycle ride in Vietnam. It's a lot of great opportunities here. Because coming from Hong Kong, I know how hard it is to create and build something new in a saturated, developed city. But here, everything is very moldable. So yeah, just get your hands dirty here.
Brilliant. Mike?
I think it's if you've been thinking about Vietnam, you've been looking at it. I think some, especially Western countries, we overthink, we overplan. Actually, there's nothing that can prepare you for Vietnam. Just come, set up, even if it's a 1 month trip, and check it out. Don't waste too much time doing more research. And then once you're here, you will really feel if it's a place for you or not.
And perhaps I'll just share a personal reflection as well. Yeah, you have to be flexible. Things don't work as they do where you're from. They just don't. So be flexible, be adaptable, be prepared to roll with the punches a little bit. The opportunities are there. And I think with that, before I get told off by my team, I think we need to wrap up. I just want to say thank you again to ISHCMC for supporting this. If any more questions, I think you can just send them through to me, and we'll answer them after the webinar. But yeah, just thank you to all the panelists for joining us. Thank you to everyone who dialed in from wherever you are in the world. I know we've had people from all over the place joining us, so thank you. And that's it. Any questions, please just send them through to me. Any comments, thoughts, and keep in touch.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Before we signing up, could we invite everyone to turn on your camera for group pictures? Okay. Okay. Here we go. We can see a lot of people turning on the camera, all of the beautiful place from all over the world. Okay.
Yeah, come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, cheese. Okay. 3, 2, 1, cheese. Chụp nghe. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Nice
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ling. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Lawrence. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much.